Hello everyone. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about the reality behind being a writer. This is mainly a video aimed at beginner writers because I'll be talking about the misconceptions one might have about writing when they first start. Mainly I'll be talking about the trials that many writers face and most likely you will face if you are a beginner writer. These common obstacles that we have to overcome to continue our passion, to write something that we're proud of, and perhaps to make a career out of writing. Before we begin, you can read this post on my website, thepentsleuth.com. There's a link to that in the description below. And if you're interested in trying out one of my free writing courses, there's a link to that in the description as well. Now, when it comes to discussing the reality of being a writer, I wanted to summarize it as cleanly as possible. So I summarized it into 5 simple tests that all writers go through. And I'll be talking about the very first one now, which is the test of willpower. The challenge that a writer faces on a day-to-day basis is simply writing. In the beginning, writing comes easy. This is because one starts writing with that initial burst of inspiration and curiosity. When writing a story for the first time, the writer feels this exciting feeling where every step is new and wonderful. Even the challenges with elements of the story don't seem so difficult to overcome. The more experienced writer knows that the initial burst that started them off is not something that happens all the time. There are times when inspiration hits you, fills you with energy, and you're ready to tackle the next segment of your story. Between these times is the test of willpower. People often mix up the use of one's willpower to start writing with forcing oneself to start writing. When you are forcing yourself to write, it is difficult every step of the way. From the very first sentence you write to the very last sentence you write, you are struggling to get the words out. Because you are forcing your creativity, and obviously that can have a harsh effect on your story. When it comes to using your willpower to get back into writing, it's to force you out of that lethargic state that keeps you from writing. An object in motion wants to stay in motion, that sort of thing. And when you are not writing, you get comfortable with not writing. Using willpower to force yourself to start writing will help you re-embrace that enjoyment that you had in writing. From then on, it gets easier and easier to write until you're back into the routine of things. That is the use of willpower. To overcome the states when you don't want to write, when you are able to write. What it really comes down to is telling the difference between can't and won't. There are times when a writer can't write. They are more interested in doing something else, perhaps their head isn't in the game, so they're kind of stuck. Their inspiration is dried up, their creativity is non-existent, they need a moment to recharge and relax. And that's perfectly fine and recommended. But then there are times when a writer has the ability and the mindset to write. This is when they won't write, when they are far more comfortable with not writing, when in reality they'll do well to write. They'll even get some enjoyment out of it after they've started. That is the test of willpower, and it is the test that writers face almost every day. Next, we have the test of strength. The next challenge one faces as a writer is developing their style. When I started writing, I believed that writing style was all about looking for a format to adhere to. As if there was a system where I chose what words I used and how I used them, not to mention how I tell a story. I quickly learned that I couldn't just look at a writer and try to emulate their style. The writing style is just the way you write. You develop this style as you write more and read more, but it comes down to your natural way of writing. It's how you would tell a story in your own words and format. The best way you can develop your writing style is to acknowledge what the strengths and weaknesses are. Perhaps there are some aspects of writing that you struggle with, particular scenes that you would like to avoid. Then there are scenes that you enjoy writing, that you can write with ease and feel somewhat proud of. Finding out your strengths and weaknesses can help you better plan your novel and add to your writing skills. You'll also have a better time improving your writing style when you acknowledge these strengths and weaknesses. This is because you can understand what types of scenes that you struggle with, and therefore you can learn about these scenes from other writers or teachers and improve upon your skill set. My biggest weakness when it came to writing are the romantic scenes. Whenever it comes to establishing a relationship between characters, I falter, I get awkward with it, and the scene obviously doesn't turn out well. So the solution to my problem was to stick with my strengths and write the scenes that I know how to write and can comfortably write. When it comes to these scenes though that I do want to include and they are of a romantic nature, I try to keep them simple and subtle. Of course that means that there's not much to those scenes, they're not as impactful, they're just simply there. However, this is a good thing considering that if I were to give them so much more attention, I wouldn't write them well and it would detract from my story. So it's better that way than the other way. And that is the test of strength. It's simply understanding what kind of writer you are and sticking to your strengths. You'll write a story that you enjoy writing and perhaps enjoy reading. Next, we have a test of self-actualization. Some days the hits keep coming. You could receive a batch of rejection letters. You could be struggling with a scene, or there are a lot of mistakes you find when editing. I understand that most writers are introverts and that most introverts are self-conscious about their work. If there's anything I have encountered most during my time teaching, it's that writers who want help are often too scared to share their work as they might not be able to handle any possible criticism. That's why for most beginner writers, a rejection letter can spell the end of their confidence in writing, especially the rejection letters that detail the publisher's problems with a novel. It all comes down to maintaining one's ego. When I say ego, I'm referring to one's confidence, self-esteem, not the typical overconfident ignorance that is often associated with ego. A writer must learn that they are not perfect and they'll never be perfect, but they must strive for perfection all the same. When a writer does this, then those detailed rejection letters actually become useful items of constructive criticism, which they can use to improve their writing, to make it a bit more palatable to a general audience and a publisher, or perhaps to make changes that they personally agree with, and they can improve upon their writing in their own eyes. Now, one could easily call this the test of humility, but I like to call it the test of self-actualization, because this is simply about realizing one's own potential and working towards it. When you take the time to acknowledge these criticisms and examine your writing fairly, then you are ready to improve as a writer. As cliche as it sounds, that is some advice that holds water. Next, we have a test of patience. Writing takes a fair amount of time. A short story of about 2,000 words can take an efficient writer about an hour to write. If the same writer can keep the pace going without pause, they can finish a 50,000 words novel in 20 hours. If it were an epic novel of 100,000 words, that's 40 hours. 1 work week at a 9-to-5 job. Of course, nobody is working at 100% efficiency all the time, and when it comes to creative tasks, where the construction of a piece is made from the building blocks the writer thinks up, even more time is spent not writing. I already know this to be true, otherwise an author could write 52 massive books a year. After 20 years, that author would have their own section in a bookstore with over 1,000 unique brick-thick books. Writing a book is not a sprint, it is a marathon. With enough time, any writer will feel drained or suffer from severe burnout if they push themselves too hard. If you think it ends there, it doesn't. Writing is one of the most difficult skills to make a career out of. Of course, one could become a writer for a paper or magazine, but that would be simply writing with what someone told you to write. I'm talking about the average novelist. So I'll say it again. Writing is one of the most difficult careers to get into. This is because you are trying to sell a product where you're asking the customer to sacrifice several hours of their time to enjoy a story if they do enjoy it. Now, this is something that many people don't want to do nowadays. much prefer surfing the internet, watching TV, hanging out with their friends, and doing other activities. And when it comes to dedicated readers, even they will not want to spend so much time on a book that they think they might not enjoy. When it comes to having such a picky client base to work with, you can understand then why publishers are so picky about the books they accept. They understand that when it comes to selling books, it's a very tough market. For this test of patience, a writer needs to have endurance when they are writing a book. It's not going to take a day, and certainly it's going to take a lot longer for them to make their first sale, their first 10 sales, and even their first 100 sales. That is the test of patience. Finally, we have a test of passion. The toughest truth a writer must face is that the percentage of writers that succeed is pitiful. Most writers will never send their work to a publisher or even consider self-publishing. As for those that self-publish, most will not put in the work to market their book, either due to lack of funds, following, or marketing experience. In short, most writers that earn any money from writing are making a few dollars a month. The ones making a decent income either worked hard to build a following of dedicated readers through their own marketing efforts, or they got lucky when it comes to appearing in the internet searches. And those that have made a fortune from their work were the few that the publishers accepted, and also had a great impact on the readers, as being published alone is no guarantee of success. So the question on every beginner writer's mind is, how do they go from making no sales to making a few dollars a month to making a decent income? Well, it comes down to 50% hard work and 50% luck. Perhaps those percentages can change depending on the writer. But when it comes to this type of field, you got to understand that there are a lot of factors at play that are often out of your hands. When it comes to the hard work portion, it's all about being consistent. It's about creating more products, more content for your readers to enjoy. And when it comes to self-publishing, you need to wear many hats. You need to be your own editor. You need to be your own manager. You need to be in charge of your own marketing. And this can be very overwhelming for a lot of writers. If you approach writing with the knowledge that success might be many years away, if you still work at it with the same amount of enthusiasm as if success was a week away, then you'll do very well. You'll do a lot better as well than the writer who simply sends their book off to a single publisher, or to a writer who self-publishes their book and doesn't do any marketing. Now, when I first started writing, I was easily led to believe that writing was a quick way to be successful. I saw those articles of writers who say they make 6 figures a year, or those writers who sell 10,000 books every month with their own marketing methods. I quickly learned that most of them were liars and others were being helped by people bigger than them. And that was a harsh reality that I had to come to grips with very soon, because I simply didn't have the connections or the money to make it as these writers claimed they did. So I struggled for many years and had many fails along the way, but then something clicked and I honed in on what was working and I stuck with it to this day. What clicked was the realization that I had to be more than just a writer. I had to approach writing as a business. It all comes down to hard work and consistency. I had to write more. I couldn't just rest on my laurels and flog the same single book that I wrote years and years ago. I had to approach it differently to those writers that are living the big life. These are the writers that won the lottery, so to speak. And I couldn't rely on this lottery method of making it as a writer. I had to take things into my own hands and build the business up. So I wrote more books and some more books. I built up a following. I learned a bit more about marketing. I learned how to do social media posts and to share things and to just widen my reach. And as the following built up, so did my sales. The phrase "a shot in the dark" comes to mind because when you only write one book and send it off to a single publisher, that is just one shot in the dark. But when you do small improvements, when you improve upon your writing, when you write more books, when you build a following, in any way that you improve your chances, you are giving yourself more bullets and you see a little clearer. If you are a beginner writer and you are starting to believe that success is unattainable in this field, I'm telling you not to give up. It is very much within your reach if you approach it with the same enthusiasm as you did when you started. Yes, it will take time and yes, it will take effort, but if you are willing to give both of those, then you will really make it as a writer, and I do mean really make it, not lottery win make it. Although who knows, you might receive that lottery win letter and have a chance to make it on the shelves in some big bookstores. Be sure to let me know what kind of challenges you feel you are facing in your writing journey in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. It really helps me out a lot. And if you want to check out more of my work, you can find it all on thepensleuth.com. There's a link to that in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, good day, good night, and happy writing.